Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Managing Your End-to-End Content Strategy, brought to you by MarketMuse. I'm your host, the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of MarketMuse, Jeff Coyle, and we're really excited to have a wonderful guest from Acrolinx today joining us. Before I introduce our guest from Acrolinx, there are some housekeeping items to review for webinar attendees. First, you can submit all questions in line, and we have team members that are going to tee them up for us, for my guests to field throughout the discussion and towards the end. So don't be shy. Please submit those as we go. Second, after the webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email with notes, with links on things that we might mention, and also some webinar exclusive opportunities that we will also mention towards the end of the discussion. And now for a quick intro for my guest. He's a customer-focused creative brand strategy expert who, as I know from personal experience, gets things done. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for Acrolinx and a really great partner of MarketMuse, Chris Willis.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody.
Great. So just to get things started, given the topic of managing our end-to-end content strategy, at Acrolinx, what projects are in process that relate to your own content strategy, and where is 2018, headed for your marketing organization?
Cool. So I consider myself new here still, although this week makes it a year.
Wow.
New is all relative, I guess. But one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on this year is really looking at our messaging, looking at how we describe what we do. We've been lucky to be a fairly future-facing software solution, but simplification is really important. We need to make this accessible and simple. It's an interesting place that we play. We have 20 of the top 20 global tech firms, software firms using our product today, but we still don't have the name recognition that I'd like us to have. And I think it's about simplicity. So defining our messaging, identifying what it is that we actually do, and then rolling that out into practice. And from a project standpoint, one of the things that I'm really excited about that we're working on right now is implementing this little platform called Acrolinx. We're using the product that our customers use. So essentially building our voice, our terminology directory, identifying our personas and how we speak to those personas, what our overall tone is, and capturing that within the platform. And then looking at our existing content, seeing how big a gap there is between that, what we are identifying as our brand strategy and the content created, and then leveraging guidance that we provide through AI and NLP to bridge that gap, to shrink that delta. And then moving forward, building all of our content around that voice so that we're accessible and we have a recognizable voice in the marketplace. We have the tools, they're available to me. I might as well be using them. And that's something that's going to happen across not just my group. It's not just about marketing, building better content. It's about every point, every digital touch point that we have with our consumers. So I want support to sound like the company. I want services to sound like the company. I want everywhere within the organization where we're touching our audience to sound like us. And I think that we can accomplish that this year.
No, that's a great goal, and that that leads. We're in a constant state of the same thing at MarketMuse. We're looking to say, where are our best opportunities for creating content that's comprehensive and will be competitive to generate whatever it is my key performance indicators are, whether it's traffic or ensuring that when they land on the page that it's going to provide the engaging experience that I want. Okay. And a significant strategic energy is spent assessing and auditing content with the expectation that whatever we publish as an organization or whatever the size of the organization, it's good or it's great or it's good enough. So when you're in a discussion at Acrolinx, when the word good is thrown around or the word quality, what does that mean? Internal, what does that mean from the product line, and how has Acrolinx transitioned their messaging from thinking about the different aspects of quality? At MarketMuse, we're constantly thinking about comprehensiveness, telling the story that users care about, and I know that that's very important at Acrolinx. What are the other things that go into that? What does good mean at Acrolinx?
Well, I mean, top level, it's content that's aligned with our strategy. We've identified a strategy that we think resonates with our audience. And especially, I mean, I talk to customers fairly regularly, and you ask, how are you doing against that goal? You've created this ideal content, voice, language. You've written it up on your whiteboard. How are you doing getting people to follow that? And the answer is usually not so good. I do some training. I have guidelines that I publish. Nobody's ever coming to you asking, hey, I really want to write this, but I need the next version of the guideline so I can get this right. It doesn't happen. And so being able to take everything that's on my whiteboard, essentially, and capture that within the platform, right, and build content that's aligned with that. That's the first level. That's what good is. But the purpose of good is really at a top level, to build content that's going to get you customers, keep you customers, and avoid business risk. Those are the three things that we've identified within our customer base that they're really trying to do. So there's granular ways to look at that. The benefits and value across a wide range of areas with consistency, enhanced findability, increased conversions, increased customer satisfaction, loyalty, renewal, faster time to market. But all of these really come back to, I'm either going to get customers, I'm going to keep or maintain customers, or I'm not going to get sued. And that's what we recognize as good content. And it's important to differentiate good from what one might think of as quality. We've talked a lot in the past about high quality content and what high quality means. And there's an assumption in the market that it means that your grammar and your spelling are right.
Right.
I mean, good news, Word also does that. But that's not what we're trying, it's not what we're setting out to do. Your strategy may be completely different than what our concept of high quality means. But we need to be able to align your content with your strategy. So we're working with a European bank, and their version of brand strategy is to sound very formal. They want to sound formal. They want to use longer words. They don't want abbreviations. They don't want liveliness in their content. They want to sound like a formal English bank.
Right.
Against everything. I mean, mind blown. That's not how you write. That seems crazy. But that's their strategy. That's their objective.
Yeah.
And our platform allows them to align their content with that voice. And that's something that really nobody else in the market has a platform that can do.
Yeah, I think what you stated is really important. And the key takeaway that I have there is, do you have a documented content strategy? What components are part of that? And with the goal of getting customers, keeping customers, making them engaged no matter where they are in the buy cycle, whether they're early stage awareness, middle of the funnel, they're making a purchase decision, but even post-purchase, how they can rely on you, that you're providing them great nurture, troubleshooting, or anything else. Are all of those things, no matter where they are in the buy cycle, are they all aligned to that documented content strategy?
Exactly. It's things that we haven't even thought of yet. I was talking to a bank the other day, and they said, look, we have TV commercials, so scripts, we have a website, we have all of the digital assets, we have the billboards that we put in ballparks. Like, all these things need to sound like us.
Yeah.
And their customers, they were explaining why they use the product. And that's really interesting, because we think in terms of website or content that lives in a repository somewhere, or marketing content, or the technical content that drives support. I'm not thinking about billboards inside Fenway Park. I'm not thinking about the commercial that I see on Fox 25 at night. And those are very real to our customers. That's aligned content. It has to be part of their voice. And it goes well beyond what you would initially think of. And that's why I think, having these conversations with the people that own the overall brand in the organization are important, because this is very much an overlay over everything that you do and everything that you say and all of those digital touch points. So it's cool when this starts in a silo. Right. I mean, we can organize our team regardless of what our team is. We can govern the content that's being created. We can add the rigor and the confidence to know that we're creating well-designed, well-thought-out content that meets the needs of our organization, our silo. How much cooler is it when you take every touch point, map every touch point in the organization, and ensure that every touch point sounds like you? And for companies in the Fortune 50, I mean, that's how they have to be. They
Right.
live and die on brand. We have customers that are putting more into brand right now than they are into just about anything because they're differentiating at the brand level.
Yep. Yeah, and even when you look at something like where you have tens of thousands of content items that might be, technical documentation, support content, even that is user generated. How can you learn about what you're broadcasting to the world, or even like you mentioned, across transformed structures? If you've got video and you're doing transcription of that video, what can you learn from that says, whenever Jeff does a video, he doesn't say these things in the standards. What are we going to do about that to make sure that that's something that we can take next steps and ensure that we're all headed in the right direction and breaking those silos?
Or worse, you've got those 10,000 pages of support content and you bring in a new head of something that has input into it and they change 3 words.
Exactly.
How do you even start?
Yeah, exactly.
And so one of my friends works at a software company here in Massachusetts, and he said they've been through 3 CMOs in the last 5 years, and each CMO comes in and creates turmoil. They change terminology, they change product packaging, and from a salesperson standpoint, there's no idea what I'm supposed to be using,
right.
which content, and they don't have a way to manage it. There is no governance over that, and content sits in repositories as written at the day that it was written with no changes ever provided, and that might be the only thing that's available to you. So you're out pitching with outdated content that does not represent either the brand or the products that you sell. And that's, I mean, it's a huge problem that a lot of companies just don't think about. And
right.
being able to come into an organization and be able to govern over the top of that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that that's essentially what I'm doing. I came in, first thing I did was go into a messaging project.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do I make sure that we adopt the messaging? We implement Acrolinx.
Yep. And excluding teams in that scenario where, it is thought to be like kind of the standard to exclude a team's content from being actively governed, whether it be something like sales, product management materials, product messaging, sales enablement, content marketing, even being, a completely different group. When you can break those silos down, it can really advance, the shared understanding of the workflow.
Absolutely.
And so, I know that when you're working with content strategy teams to get aligned, and they have those execution, looking to execute content more effectively, what are the typical challenges that you run into with Acrolinx clients and when they're first starting out that you're, heavily focused on in their first, 3 months, 6 months of working with you?
Well, you identified one of them already. I mean, I can talk a great game about how we take all this stuff off the whiteboard and pull it into the platform.
Right.
There is a small problem at some customers.
Mm-hmm.
They got a blank whiteboard. And so there is a sense in all cases of everybody has some form of terminology that they use, and everybody has some sense of voice, although largely unused, and the need to actually leverage existing content. So go in and harvest these rules and create terminology directories with the customer so that we're creating the guidelines by which we're going to govern your content. Not everybody is IBM. Not everybody has a well thought out, documented voice and brand, but it's in there. Mm-hmm. And it's in the content you've written. It's in the words you're using. And we can help you bring that out to the surface and then re-implement that and then test it against time. That's one of the things I said at the very beginning, is that ability to come back around and see if, actually, maybe we were talking about this before we even started, but the idea of scoring content. And your Acrolinx score says that you have great aligned content. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see how it does in practice. Our objective is to increase conversion, for instance. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is a score of 90 actually increasing conversions? Because one of two things. One, you're getting a false positive for some reason. So somewhere there's something incorrect. Or two, your whiteboard's wrong. Right. And we need to come back around and leverage our learning to help you define your strategy that's going to be most effective back to your target audience. And that's where this gets really exciting, because now we're not just solving a problem with AI, but we're coming back around and helping iterate and make the business better.
Absolutely. And so you effectively cross-referencing the things that you got off of that whiteboard and built into those business rules and built into the goals for the tones, and using your content to drive research. So often we find that we're looking for external sources to build this out, but you've got the story. It's in the tarot cards of your content. It's that reading to say, what is this telling the world? What does my content say about my organization? What does it say about this writer or this author? What does it say about this group? And when you can start to look within to the content to say, how is this telling, how is this telling our story? You begin to uncover those gaps and those strengths also, and those opportunities to say, we already own this topic really well. How do we take advantage of that to drive the next 10 items that we create? And that's something that we gauge, how successful is a team going to be working with marketing? And I know that, that's a focus to say, where is your organization today? No matter where you are, we want to level you up to be, at least a 9 out of 10 on all these metrics really quickly. And so from a research side, how does that, how does that resonate with what your experience has been on, using your content to tell the story?
I think it's the same idea. I mean, we've broken out our content into sort of logical areas of the value flow across the customer journey. And we're trying to fill gaps in the areas of why do you have a problem? So that broad messaging, into why Acrolinx, so going deep into the product, and then why now? So going into compelling events, metric, and measurement. And all of our content fits those areas, and it's all written slightly differently, with a different feel and approach, but all with our same rules and governance on top of that. And I think it mirrors what our customers are doing out there in the market. You and I were out in California in May and listened to IBM speak about their use case. And the thing that I thought was most interesting about what James Mathewson said was that somebody in the audience asked, what's the ROI on this? How do you figure out the ROI on everything that you've built out here? And they've built out a huge marketing tech stack that is inclusive of what we all do. And the answer was, do you mean leads?
Right.
And then he went on to say, well, yeah, but also closed business. Our content is driving closed business. That's how we measure all of this. So he's generated budget to build out a huge content engine that's fueled by millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of agency and in-house content. Fueled that by closed business. That's an amazing
that's
ROI model.
And we actually had a question from the audience about if your business is in the stage where you're still trying to justify said ROI. What are the ways that you can use, what are some, you've spoken about anecdotally, every customer that I work with, that's a core focus, is to say, how are you going to be measuring this? I don't want to come back 3 months from now, 6 months from now, when I've given you advice as to the content to create to ensure that you're competitive and, crushing in the space and owning the topic. And then you say, yeah, we got traffic, but then what? How do you coach a marketing group who still has to establish the ROI on content? I know that's my job every day. But how do you approach making sure that you're tying back the wins? You're tying back the fact that you need top of funnel to get bottom funnel. You need mid funnel to be bottom funnel, because frankly, if you only write content whose goal is to generate conversions, you're not the expert. You're not telling the world that you have that expertise. So how do you coach a team that still has to establish the content marketing ROI internally?
So it comes down to what they're trying to accomplish. So I talked about consistency. I talked about findability, conversion, customer sat, loyalty, renewal, faster time to market. What's your metric that you're trying to achieve here? And so talking to a company last week, their primary objective was to create 10 times the amount of content this year that they did last year. There's been an acquisition at the same high level of content alignment that they were last year. So essentially, creating great content just like last year, except doing it 10x.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that seems realistic.
That's super easy.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's all do that. But that becomes their guiding KPI. And if we go back to get customers, keep customers, avoid getting sued. Now, why do you want to do that? What is the driving force of that? And I look at the value messaging and the value drivers that we talk about as a block of coal that eventually is condensed down to being a diamond. We're working through a funnel to get to the point of highest value where we can create measurement and get that traction around agreement, pressure test that value point as part of the sales cycle, and then see that happen as how we manage implementation and ongoing success of the customer. And that's where you do need to get it. Okay, so 10x, what are you trying to do? Well, we're trying to launch more product. We acquired several different brands. Okay, interesting. 10x the number of products? No, we have multiple voices. We have maybe 5x the product set, but we have multiple voices that we talk to. Okay, so you're trying to create messaging across multiple personas, possibly with single pieces of content. And you're trying to do that to achieve market share? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now we need to work on benchmarking. Do you have any idea of how you're doing today? And in some cases, they have every idea. In some cases, they don't. But identifying that benchmark at the beginning of the process to say, this is where we're starting. This is what today's current process looks like. We have a desired future process that would be, the creation of more content at the same great level of quality and content alignment. If we don't do this, there are going to be negative consequences that we are going to identify as part of this. But really what we want to see is an increase in market share. Mm-hmm. We want to see an increase in unguided brand awareness. And in order to identify those as key metrics that we're going to go forward and measure, again, you got to give me a sense of where you're at now. And we're going to implement and measure in our essentially our final phase of the process, which is our customer success phase. We're going to help the customer realize whether or not value has been achieved against those goals. Yeah. And that's, regardless of their level of complexity or their level of understanding at the beginning of the process, we really can't operate without something like that. How do you have a conversation about use of product if we don't know whether it's working? And if we don't know what it's designed for, we will never know what it's working.
Well, you can do it, but it's effectively rolling the dice every time, and that's not a good way to run business.
Absolutely. Are they going to renew? I don't know. Maybe.
It's not a customer success model that I want to subscribe to. So one thing I'll mention also, and you were tying to it, was you were giving a natural narrative on what I like to reference as kind of the 5 whys. And Rob Rose from Content Marketing Institute has famously documented this in some of his presentations, but it's to say, I want to write 10x the content. Why? And then to continue on until you get deep down to the fact that, your goal for content isn't a content strategy. It isn't content goals. It's to inform your business strategy. And I have, countless number of clients and who we've worked with who have literally changed their entire business focus as a result of doing these processes, as a result of doing these things successfully, to where they said, here, a great example is we can't compete in this one topic that we've been focusing on for 90% of our content budget. It's just getting overrun. But we've identified these other 4 focus areas that we can. So let's focus our energy on those things and own them and successfully own them. And as a result, lift all boats so that maybe 1 year, 2 years down the road, we might be able to own that other topic that today was too difficult for us to achieve with the money we were throwing at it. So there's all kinds of things that you can get to by saying, what do you really want to achieve? You've come up with the way to get from today's maturity to tomorrow. Yep. But is that really, are you informing that with a real step-by-step plan? Exactly. So I love that that's part of both of our strategy. And when you're looking at those data points in Acrolinx, what are the things that they see in a dashboard, for example, that would get them to plan? And we talked about SCORE, but can you share a little bit more about kind of SCORE? Because some people might not even be familiar with Acrolinx SCORE that are on the webinar. So.
Sure. So one of the sort of the most visible aspects of the Acrolinx platform is the scoring of content. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're essentially reading content at scale against that strategy that we've captured within the platform. doing a comparison to see if you've written content that's aligned with that. And highly aligned content will be highly scored. So it's a 0 to 100 scale. I know in my business, I don't see any content. Nothing comes to me unless it's 80 or above. And that means generally that it's aligned, right? So with that score, what you're learning is a sense of, does this match my tone of voice? Is this leveraging my terminology? Is this well written and well structured? Are my sentences too long? Do my sentences make sense? We go further when we work with companies like yours to be able to do a lot more around findability and the understanding of how content can be used and categorized. And all of that plays into that final score that is used to compare this content across a wide range of content. And what you see in your dashboard is things like score improvement over time. So as we use this product, are we getting better at writing content? And this isn't just content that pre-exists, but content that's been written in real time and being driven by artificial intelligence guidance. We haven't even talked about yet. I know it's crazy. Science fiction, real. You see individual department usage. So one of the disappointing things in a lot of companies, and it is here, is that when you look at our departmental usage of Acrolinx, certain departments have much higher alignment scores than others. And it tends to tie to who's most comfortable with external communication.
Right.
And I mean that in a way that's completely opposite of what you're thinking. So management tends to have lower Acrolinx scores because they tend to wing it and make things up. Kills me because that's also where I show up. And I think that everything that I say is brilliant. But I'm able to see at the department level who's following this, who's aligning their content, who's putting out the best. It's a management technique. I can see who's using it. I can see, for instance, cost benefit. So at the review and editing level, how much of the cost associated with review am I cutting out of this? There's a lot that's there, and there's a lot of additional data that can be routed into third-party data analytics tools to be able to create a real story around your content. And that was a big push for us this year, earlier in the year, and at our conference, Content Connections in May, which we'll be making an announcement about very shortly for 2019. I think I'm signing a contract on a location tomorrow, actually.
Excellent.
More to follow on that. But analytics has been a big push for us in creating more information, more usable information about your content, about the people creating your content, about how that content's being created.
I think that's really poignant, and I think there was a follow-up question to the previous one about the ROI side and how do you actually get that budget? And I think that part of that speaks to something that you see on screen here, which relates to how am I providing this product, these content item proposals that have this shared wisdom? Everybody's on the same page of what I'm proposing, so that when the writer is going to get to that point, they can write with confidence that what they deliver is going to achieve the goals of the business. So having the detailed, comprehensive content, topics, outlines, everything they want to achieve with the brand voice, tone, and any standards for excellence, and whether it's scored or just standard, make sure everything's spelled right. And when you have that shared wisdom, there's gonna be so many workflow improvements and efficiency improvements. And so it makes it a lot easier to make the ROI, make the case for ROI.
Absolutely. And that tends to be how we work with customers in the sales cycle. Is the first thing is to look at some of their content, take a repository of theirs and rip into it and provide them back a view of how it does. And to be fair, it's a limited view because we're not doing a full capture of their strategy, but we are able to see enough to say, look, we've pulled in a portion of your terminology guide, and my goodness, you're all over the place. You're not using the right words at all. So an example recently is a major brick and mortar retailer, I'll call it. I wish I could say more on this one, but they have a way of serving customers that is very specific. And we analyze their training content. And it's important that their training content leverage their language, use their approach towards their audience, and be absorbable by the people that they're going to be training.
Right.
And we were able to show through analytics, looking at their training content, that it didn't. Their content was all over the place. Terminology was all over the place. And the end result of the use of this content would be confusion, essentially. And if you're trying to deliver a consistent customer experience across all of your outlets worldwide, you really can't afford that. And so we tied the value of the product to the cost savings or the lack of cost loss that they would experience, revenue loss they would experience by delivering terrible customer experience at their point of sale. And that's, I mean, it's a very real thing for these businesses that live and die on that touch point. I mean, that's the only shot you got. And if you're not delivering a consistent experience, then that's a problem. Yep. And that resonated up to the board level with them.
Absolutely. No, that's right on.
A real experience. And so, I mean, I could talk about the cost of review cycles and how limiting your editing saves you time and money. And those things are real, and that's real cost savings. But when you get to the strategic level, what are you trying to do? Does your content do it? And can we show that through a dashboard? It's inarguable.
And people will pay $1 for efficiency gains, but they'll pay 10 for something like that. And that's really that's the vision of everything. And I say for the viewer who's thinking about, how do I get the purse strings? How do I get that? It's really to audit. It's to look at a real example of something where you feel it was out of alignment. To look at competitive analysis to say how it might be being done in a way that's negatively impacting your brand by a competitor. It's to look at case studies. Regardless whether it's a solution in the marketplace or just building your own case study, this is how they're doing it. And even getting management to read this is one of my favorite things. I'll put, hey, just read this content item. This is how you're representing your brand. And identifying, everyone's got blind spots. Writers, you write, you might forget a component of a page. That's fine. Not having the ability to coach them up, not having the ability to have that shared goal and wisdom, you're going to naturally have those things. So to build that business case, you really do have to make that compilation of case studies, read this gap analysis that tells the story that, hey, we're not putting our best foot forward, and that's okay. Because there's a way to fix this.
At the speed of business today, you can't keep up with terminology changes, language changes, and messaging changes. You have to have some advantage that gets you there. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing.
Yes, the unfair competitive advantage. That's really the terminology is key here. We're frequently looking to empower writers. To give them insights in line that are going to tell the story of that which a subject matter expert would cover. So that's the advantage that we give, that unfair advantage, to say everything you write is going to be better than every one of your competitors every time from the standpoint of comprehensiveness. And I'm going to be able to ensure that everything that I give my writers inline feedback to say, hey, have you remembered to cover buyer personas in your article about content marketing strategy? Yep. Nope. Okay, well, consider adding that. And so in your case with Acrolinx, how do you feel the value of giving this type of information, from the standpoint of tone, readability, voice, and insurance on business rules can drive that ROI?
Well, I mean, I think it does, obviously, but I think that combined solution of ours is where it starts to get really interesting, because I would love for us to be a content strategy platform, but we're not. Mm-hmm. We're a content strategy alignment. Mm-hmm. But with you guys, we've become more, and it gets into planning and ideation and what is the point of the content. And I love the idea of, I think I'm writing about oranges. Right. Turns out, however, after careful review, I'm not writing about that at all. This is completely about apples, and it's illustratable, shows up in a dashboard, shows up in a report, and it allows me to readjust the kind of content that I'm creating to get to where we need to get to as a business. Mm-hmm. And when you're able to do that, it starts to change everything about how you think about the creation of content in your business. Because obviously, we're gonna shrink your production time, your time to market, your content velocity is gonna be dramatically affected regardless. We're working on clarity, and you're working on accuracy. We're bringing together business goals, this real-time guidance, and driving authors in an objective way. And all of those things are very real. But when you tie all this together, it becomes very interesting in how you're creating content that's going to move the dial. I think that's where this becomes the most exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then taking it a little bit off topic, we did have a question that relates to, when you're working with an agency for content, or if you're a relatively smaller business, do these goals still ring true? And I really feel like they do, because when you're providing, let's say you're providing someone and you work for an agency and you're providing content for a client, having a shared understanding of the quality of the content that you may provide. If you're working with somebody and you're getting that content from them, evaluating it, making sure that you give them guidance as to how to improve the next cycle of content that you're receiving. These are all immediately actionable if you're a solopreneur, if you're a small business, or if you're an agency owner, or you work with agencies, to provide less cycles of feedback, to less situations where you're touching content that you don't have to, where it could have been managed by the person who is creative, who is the subject matter expert, because biased editing can create some of those silos you were talking about.
Absolutely. One of our customers said it best at last year's conference. He said, we thought that our authors wouldn't like the idea of being measured and judged by a robot. Turns out they're wrong. They were wrong, and they actually kind of like it, because when you're judged by a human, humans have things like moods and opinions and attitudes. Right. And so if somebody's having a bad day and they feel like kicking you around a little bit, they're going to come in and they're going to poorly review everything. It's completely subjective. It's based on their individual opinion that day. And all that goes away when you're using an objective AI-based editing tool.
Absolutely.
It's not about me and you. It's about this and the rules, and either you're doing it or you're not. And I'm a robot. I don't really care what you're doing. I'm just telling you. And people can choose to use it or not. But much like many tools that work very well in the business, those that use it tend to be successful. Those that don't tend not to be. I know personally, I choose to use it before I send out anything very important to either our board or my CEO, because look, I don't want to look dumb. My CEO is a PhD in linguistics. He catches everything I do. And I mean, you can imagine sitting in a meeting with this man. He sees every error as if it was zoomed in just so, and so I need to make sure that I don't mess up. And this objective review process, it doesn't care. It's not telling anybody. It's between me and the robot, and I come off looking better. Who wouldn't want that? And in the case of the customer that spoke, as it turned out, they all really get a kick out of it because it just makes them better, and nobody judges.
Yeah, I've heard from some of those linguistics experts at Acrolinx before. Getting somebody to really feel great about what they're producing has such an impact on the business. So if I have a writing team and I'm having less cycles, I'm saying, well, yeah, we know everything we publish is going to be great. We know it hits the number. It hits our business goals. There's a lot less subjectivity. But I always like to frame it as coaching versus judging. And historically, editing has a lot of times been just a judge, rework, awkward, things like that. Where we have solutions, and there are many out there that are trying to coach and say, hey, you didn't identify this topic, or this doesn't exactly fit the business rules. Let's consider expanding on this. Consider adding a section to your page. These are all things that if you're a writer and it's just you in the box, it's a lot easier to overcome and feel like it's not a writing cycle or going to cost you 3 days or miss a deadline if it's providing you that in cycle. So.
Absolutely, and it's worse than that. So one of the reasons that I work here now is because when I was in my last job, this resonated for me. I ran a marketing organization at an Israeli software company, and my best minds were product marketers. They weren't writers.
Right.
And they wrote in a combination of English as a second language.
Right.
And it meant that every review had to be not only fixing, but understanding what were you actually trying to say. And it was super hard. And it took a really long time because it wasn't well written. It was just really well thought, super smart, but just poorly written.
Right.
So it was a constant effort to go back and say, what did you mean? Before I can fix this, what did you mean? Like, I don't want to rewrite this so it doesn't make sense. I don't understand what you're writing, but I don't understand it for two reasons, not just one. Mm-hmm. And the ability, I believed, as I was headed this direction, to be able to give them something that let them fix those problems. Mm-hmm. The computer says, I don't understand what you mean, fix it. And by the time it gets to me, it's not poorly written anymore. It's aligned with our terminology, and our terminology was very specific.
Right.
And it was in the voice that we were trying to produce. Now I'm just reading it for, and I know this is crazy, for content and thought. And we don't do that anymore. When
right.
somebody hands you content to review, by the time you get done with grammatical and spelling errors, you're like, I'm out. It's done. It's fine. I'm sure that it says what we want it to say. But we blow past that, because by the time it makes it to me, I'm reading it to say this is either interesting or it's not interesting. Like, I like this and it represents what we want to say, or it doesn't. And that's a great place to be, because now we're making strong decisions on the type of content that we let represent us, not just the fact that it doesn't have hidden obscenities somewhere in the middle of it that we didn't know about.
Yeah. Your writers are becoming writers more often. Your editors are actually editing from the standpoint of understanding the collective vision of the publication or of the site.
Exactly.
And I'll add one more wrinkle on this. Our goal is to avoid that dreaded SEO audit. I mean, it is that sucks so much life out of an organization for someone who has no idea. And, you know, I was that. I've been doing this for about almost 20 years. I thought that the SEO audit was a good idea in the early 2000s. But getting further earlier in the process, and then ensuring that the search team has the same shared understanding about what you want to achieve, getting that, you know, fixed into there to say, oh, this actually makes the article better, not just makes it, you know, it's not just a subjective lens.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think that we, you know, see this all the time. And I'll twist the conversation a little bit into promotion and in pushing content. And I know that there's, you know, from both of our solutions, we're not really focused on this, but what have you seen people really take and understand, like publishing cadence, how they can improve on that with your organization or with clients from the standpoint of pushing and publishing?
Well, we're trying to help our customers build a predictable machine.
Yep.
And that's as much a part of building that cadence as anything else, is knowing when you can expect content to be created. When we talk, I mean, you saw at the conference, I asked the question, please describe your review process. And the feedback that came up in real time, I for those of you that weren't there, I did one of those text-based feedback things in the middle of a conference and kind of based my session on it. It was a bit risky, but things that you ask, how's your review cycle for your content? I'm betting everybody's going to be negative, and damned if they weren't. Yeah. And taking some of the guesswork out of that, of how many times does somebody need to read this, and cutting it back to the answer being one, because by the time I get it, it's ready to go. I'm reading for content, and allowing you to build date boxes around the way that you deliver this content. And it plays to that content velocity message that
absolutely
we talked about a couple times, of accelerating this through the process, not letting things sit and moving it to the next step until that next step is production, and getting it out in an automated way where, you know, when it launches, it's I'm going to use the word good. It's aligned.
You know, it's on. You know, it's hitting all the marks. I mean, you know, it really is that though. You know, you're confident that if you've got this scheduled, it's going to be ready to publish. And that's what I always ask. How confident are you that you're going to hit your editorial calendar on the dates marked? Do you have an editorial calendar? How often are you going back and updating and improving existing content and republishing? Mm-hmm. Because of, for one reason or another, there is up-to-date information in the market. Or it's something that just needs to be done to make it hit home better today than it couldn't have 3 months ago. And really what I'm looking for when I ask that question is how predictable is your world today? Let's make it much more predictable, because everybody's going to be more successful in that scenario. And I kind of touched on optimization and improving existing content, but it also is looking back. When you start on a solution like with Acrolinx, is to say, historically, what have we done? What can I do to fill in gaps that'll make sure that everything's on message today, to create that culture of, kind of awareness of where we are today and where we aspire to be.
Absolutely. And I mean, if the audience isn't sitting in their offices or sitting at home or wherever you are right now, if you're not shaking your head, yes, like if this is not real for you, I don't know where you work, because this, I mean, it's absolutely a real thing. You get all the way to the finish line and you push that content out into production, and one person reads it and is like, "Ooh, actually, we changed that last week." Boom, right. Blown up. And that's the best case. That's the best case, because there's bottlenecks all over your enterprise. People just waiting to throw this model off. And the more that you can do around automation, but while assuring that you're on path, the faster you're going to go. And the quicker time to market means that you're affecting business in real time. If you take 6 months to release a piece of premium content, it doesn't matter anymore. Right. It's too late.
No, and that's really poignant. And just to check on time, and I want to make sure that we hit on all the questions. We've had a great set of questions that pop in, and I'll bring on this slide that kind of walks through the end-to-end solutions and strategy that we've been talking about to help guide us if we need it. And so we had a great question about Acrolinx specifically that focuses on, does it focus on just one type of content, so just knowledge-based content, or is it a wide spectrum? And I can say from MarketMuse's perspective, we're focused on everything. Whether you're a local-focused company, whether you're building content about, kitty cats, as well as, enterprise software, really can get into the details on what does it mean to be an expert, what does it mean to be a thought leader. In Acrolinx's case, I feel, very similar focus. So can you highlight that and how that works?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. When I talked about the banking customer with all of the different use cases for their content, I like cat content. I can watch that all day long. And if you've got a script for how you present your cat content on YouTube, and you need that to be in your voice, that's a piece of content that would move right through our process.
Right.
We don't care what we're moving through. That's part of our business, whether it's internationalization and translation, whether it's technical content, marketing content, sales content, or support, it all comes together to be the language that you use in your business and the voice that you want to project.
And is there an angle in that for structured content? So how there might be a rubrics or structures in that content? Can you work that into Acrolinx? So. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, we do that on our own. We do that through third-party partners, but we do manage structured content as well. Okay.
Excellent. And then I think that another question that came on was, I think we've answered many of them just naturally. And one thing I'll mention is this something to where the question came in, is this something to where we can keep our auditing and our inventories up to date? And how frequently are we able to say, okay, this is source of truth for today for everything that I've got? Is that something where I'm going to be able to take my organization immediately from being one audit a year, which is the common practice, certainly the common practice in many large organizations, to something where we can consistently get ongoing feedback?
Yeah, we have customers that essentially have integrated their content model into a continuous model, just like continuous integration and continuous delivery on the tech side, on the development side. So content is checked into a repository. That content is then loaded through Acrolinx, reviewed and scored, and passed back around on a continuous basis. So it's always kept up to date. We have a wide array of integrations with content repositories for that very reason, because we need to be able to get to that content and see that as regularly as our customers would like to see it. And that's the whole keeping up to date thing. So one of our pricing models is based around words under governance. And the question is, well, once I see it once, why would I ever want to see it again? And that's the exact reason why, because things change. Absolutely. And how do we keep this content up to date, keep it lively and accurate and with the business messaging that we're trying to achieve? And that's how. is by updating your filters, updating the platform to be able to see what we are today and then review that content over again and provide feedback.
And yeah, and that's right on, and that's something that's really important to understand the flexibility of both solutions. In our case, also, we want to provide real-time access to competitive information, because the way that it was 3 months ago or 6 months ago isn't all that relevant to where it is today. So we're giving, with our applications, a real-time view, but we're also updating your, like you mentioned, updating your content inventory as frequently as you desire, and that's something that can be worked out to be as often as you desire, and that's at any scale, which is great. I think that that's one thing that people don't know is out there. People think that it's something that they have to do only quarterly or first half, second half to guide their strategy. And so that was a great question. I think we've actually answered all seven of the questions. So that was wonderful. So thank you all for participating with that. We're about to be on time. One thing before we get into some of these plugs and promotions, I just wanted to give Chris, from your standpoint, as far as if you were sitting as a content team owner or a technical documentation owner or a content marketing lead at a mid to large organization, what were the things you'd be thinking about for the rest of the year or into 2019 based on what we've discussed, or quick win initiatives, or something that you can, bring to the bank to access budget?
Yeah, I mean, the quickest thing is I want you to be thinking about your brand. I want you to be thinking about your voice and your terminology. But things you can do today to turn on and make a difference is the review process.
Right.
So automating that review process and eliminating all the time that goes into it, eliminating the bottlenecks in your organization, waiting for management to read content that's been written in the last 3 days. Like, that's not going to happen. And so we can affect change around that immediately. And that's, I think, it's stage one of a big, valuable implementation of this product. But stage one matters. And that velocity, that content velocity that we can add just through doing that makes a huge difference in the business from a cost savings standpoint and from a time to market standpoint.
Yeah, and sometimes just updating, illustrating what a page is today to where it could be, or even a small amount of pages, or getting a content proposal or a content brief in someone's hands to write a page, and just having them experience what that looks like, or working with, something that's giving inline recommendations can have a big impact to say, this is the way it was, this is the way it could be, this is that aspirational model that I think is going to change our business, and turn the content strategy, into that business strategy. And so I think that that's a great way to end the webinar today. I did want to highlight on two things. One, both companies, MarketMuse and Acrolinx, are sponsors at Content Marketing World next week. I will be there, absolutely. Chris, you will be there?
I will not. Andrew Bradenkamp, our CEO, will be there.
Right, Andrew will be there. Okay, so if you want to speak with the, CEO of Acrolinx, you want to speak with me, I've got a number of team members there, and the marketing team will be, from Acrolinx will be there, and booth 412. They have a book signing with actually Robert Rose, who I was just mentioning, and Joe Paluzzi. These are two of the best people in our space, just visionaries in the space. They're signing their new book. Great, it'd be great to get to connect with them, meet with them. I hope to meet with them as well next week.
I feel like we can arrange that.
Yeah, I think we're going to take care of that. And then MarketMuse book a booth at 544. We're actually doing a special thing for webinar participants and registrants who are looking at the replay. If you'd like to get, and this is a little bit tough for us, but we're doing it. If you'd like to get your site or a site that you're managing in our platform for a customized demo, we're going to be doing that for anyone only if you're registering via this secondary form on this webinar. And we rarely do this. So if you want to see your stuff, your topics, your pages, and get a quick assessment of top opportunities, certainly it's not going to be as robust as a complete implementation, but you're going to get immediate implementation and to get those opportunities. So reach out, fill out this form, reach out specifically to me or my team, Jeff at marketmuse.com, and we're going to make that happen. Also, please come visit us in our booth at Content Marketing World, and we also have a pre-workshop with Chris Penn at Content Marketing World on using AI to optimize content. So very poignant today topic. So if you haven't registered or built your agenda for next week, make sure that you look for the workshop session with Chris Penn and it's going to be a fun one. So I think that's it. Chris, I do want to thank you so much. Here's our information at the bottom. You can tweet at me at Jeffrey_Coyle, Jeff@marketmuse.com. You can also look at Christopher.Willis at Acrolinx.com or at CP Willis. And that is all I have today. And thank you all so much and everybody for setting this up. And I look forward to seeing you next month for our discussion about building your technology marketing stack. Thank you so much.